this should be working. Yeah, perfect. So I will take myself off now and I will hand over to you, Holly.
Perfect, thank you, Hayley. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join today. I am Holly and I'm from 1U Leeds. I'm the partnership manager here, and hopefully you've heard of 1U Leeds, but if you haven't, you've got the next 45 minutes to an hour to get to know what we do at 1U Leeds. This session today is going to talk really specifically about key healthy eating messages, a little bit about creating SMART goals, a bit about what our services offer, and it's really just a great opportunity to reflect on maybe your own eating habits, your family's eating habits, and where you've got to, because often things can be so flexible and can be changing. No one day is the same when it comes to our food, so it's really just a good opportunity to have to take time out of your day to really think back about how that diet is for you. I'm going to put myself present my slides now, so just 2 seconds. There we go. So I won't make everyone introduce themselves, but it's wonderful to meet you all. As I said, we're going to look at the key healthy eating messages, look at making goals, and understand the support available. So why is it important to really be thinking about our food? And a lot of us will know this, but in the most recent statistics, only 29% of adults and 18% of children eat 5+ portions of fruit and veg a day. It can be really challenging to get that in. I know I may struggle myself, so it's really worth knowing how low those figures are. We know that actually our eating habits can be related to long-term conditions and can actually reduce our life expectancy by an average of 9 years. The number of people with long-term conditions is increasing due to physical inactivity, poor diet and alcohol misuse. And obesity in the UK is rapidly rising. By 2050, it is predicted that 60% of men and 50% of women will be living with obesity. So we know that the rates are rising. And so this, like I said, this session really just gives us an opportunity to reflect on our personal experiences and maybe our families and people around us. So this is a nice opportunity to do some of that reflection. So how in control do you feel about your food choices? Now, we can see a scale here. It says 1 to 10, and you've got the red area here, which is I don't really feel in control. And there could be a lot of different reasons why. You may not understand nutritional guidance. It may be that you don't have time to read food labels because you're in such a rush. You're working long hours, you're not getting to the supermarkets. It could be that because of those hours you're eating more convenience meals. You know, I'm just going to pop this in the microwave or put this in the oven. You don't have time to prepare that food, which you would ideally like to eat. You might cook and eat what your children eat. So if you've got fussy children that don't like their fruit and veg yet, you may find that you're putting a lot less veg in that you usually would, and you might be picking at their food instead. It could be finances. We know that a lot of stuff has gone up in price, and a lot of people have been in unfortunate circumstances where the food that we bring into the house might not be the food that we would ideally like to buy. It might be that you're being cared for and other people are shopping for you, or that maybe even you're at work and your partner's cooking and you're eating whatever your partner's cooked for you and you haven't really had a say that day in what you're having. So there's a lot of reasons why we can edge towards the back end of that scale. And like I said, it can change daily. On a different day, you may feel like you've had the day, you've cooked, you've been able to cook a freshly prepared meal, you've been able to get to the supermarket and buy the food you'd like to buy, you feel confident cooking, you're not stressed, so you don't feel like you're stress eating. So there's a lot of reasons why we can go between that scale, and it can really change daily. So now is a really great opportunity to just have a little couple of seconds to think about where you'd put yourself on that scale this week, today, this year. Usually for myself, I put myself quite slap bang in the middle of, 6 or 7. I really try, but some days, especially in winter, it's a lot harder to eat healthier, and I know that impacts me. A sunny day like today, I'd love to eat a salad. So it's a great opportunity to know whereabouts you're at and to know how much change you can make in your daily routine that can maybe bring you up a little bit higher. So hopefully some of you have seen this before. This is the Eat Well guide, and it might be quite small on your screens, but the presentation can be sent around, so you'll get a bigger version later. So we have the Eat Well plate on one side and the Eat Well guide on the other. And the Eat Well plate is the older version of our food guidance, and the Eat Well guide is more current and more up to date. So there's been some changes. So I always like to go through and show where those changes are, because often we could be working our healthy eating and nutritional information and taking that from old information that we may not have been updated on. You know, what your grandparents maybe cooked for you, or what your parents cooked for you, may actually not be as much part of the new nutritional guidance. So it's really nice to go over what updates there's been. So first of all, they've changed the name. I'll go back. So yeah, they've changed the name from the Eat Well plate to the Eat Well guide, because it is just guidance. It's not what should be on your plate each day. It should more be a guide and used to help you structure maybe what your week looks like, your day looks like, or your meal looks like. It is just there as a supporting tool. Our fruit and veg intake has gone up, it's increased, it's got bigger. They say 5 fruit and veg a day, but actually it's 5+. You know, the more you can get, the better. Don't get to 5 and think, oh, I've done. We can keep adding all that nutritional value into our diets. And what's included in this now is things like your frozen fruit and veg and your tinned fruit and veg that are in water without sugar. These make up a part of that 5 a day, where previously it might not have been thought, and they're great ways at saving money as well. So if you are thinking, oh, but I keep buying my broccoli and it goes off, or I'm struggling to eat all that fresh fruit, you know, you can buy frozen or tinned, and it does work towards your 5 a day. It's still packed with healthy nutrients and vitamins. Our carbs has increased as well, but really the main thing that's changed in that section is that there's a really big emphasis on that whole grain swap. So where we can swap to brown bread, wholemeal pasta, wholemeal rice, it's far better for us. It keeps us fuller for longer, and it's far more nutritional. So there is a really big emphasis on now in getting rid of that white bread and all that refined carbs, and really focusing on all that whole grain goodness that we can get. Our dairy is there, and this now includes your soya milks or your alternatives for a wider variety of diets, and it has got smaller. Fortunately for some, if you're a big dairy fan like I am, it now includes other information around the sides as well, such as checking your food labels. That's part of a healthy diet, is making sure that we're reading the food labels and really understanding what we're putting in our body. It's fantastic and very easy to read when the traffic light signals are there, but it's always worth making sure that you are aware of what it is you're having. It also includes information about how much water we should be getting, so 6 to 8 glasses of water a day is recommended. But this can also include things like low-fat milk, sugar-free drinks, including tea and coffee. They all count. So as long as you're not adding sugar into your tea, that all counts towards that water consumption. Before, in the last one, you had a section that was literally specifically about snacks, and that's been taken away because we know that snacks don't provide us any nutritional nutrients, really. Not to say that you can't have them, everything in moderation, but it has been taken away as part of that guidance, and is just there to say eat less often in small amounts, but it's not going to be part of your building blocks to that healthy eating, to get into that healthy eating point. In our protein, we now include beans and pulses. So they're a great source of protein, but they're also a really affordable source of protein. And there's a really big emphasis, of course, on, you know, eating lean mince and reducing that red meat consumption and eating, you know, chicken and fish where possible. Your spreads and oils, that's a really small part of and has reduced and is still part of that Eat Well plate. So choosing saturated oils and using very small amounts. And finally, the orange strip at the bottom has some information about calories, and what I'd say with that is always take it with a pinch of salt. Our size and structure and how much physical activity we do in a day can really change what we should be consuming. I know I'm going to be sat down probably for about 8 hours today working and not be particularly active, but as guidance, you have 2,000 calories for women and 2,500 calories for men as a rough guidance. So that's how that has changed, and that's the current guidance that we would recommend when thinking about how to build up what you have on a day or a week, and how that should look when we translate it onto our plate is that roughly half our plate should be vegetables, a quarter protein and a quarter carbs. Now that's all well and good if we're having a very Western meal, you know, meat and 2 veg, but if you are finding yourself cooking things, maybe a bolognese or a curry, you can always put all your ingredients on the worktop and kind of look and think, is half of that vegetables roughly, is a quarter of it roughly protein, and is a quarter roughly carbohydrates, and then when you start cooking, you know that it's a very well balanced meal. So fruit and veg, we should be aiming for 5 a day, if not more, like I said, and ideally that's 2 fruit and 3 vegetables, and that's just because we know fruit's really high in sugar. It's high fibre, it makes you feel full, it's high in vitamins and minerals, and it contains plenty of water. So if you are struggling to get, you know, those 6 to 8 glasses of water in a day, by having a few more maybe snacks that are fruit and veg based, you will be getting hopefully a little bit more water in as well. You've got your carbohydrates, so this is your main source of energy. Choose whole grain options where possible, and it's high in fibre and it will make you feel fuller for longer. Protein supports your body's growth and repair. Choose lean and low fat options, and it digests slowly so you feel full as well. And in addition, we can have those snacks as well. So how I like to think about it is, if I was thinking of my meals a day and I've got that 2,000 calorie rough guidance, breakfast would be about 400 calories, lunch would be about 600 calories, and dinner would be about 600 calories. And then I have about 300 calories to play around with snacks, which is great. And I could do one big snack if I wanted to, or ideally I'd do maybe 3 small 100 calorie snacks. So maybe that's a portion of fruit, maybe that's some cucumber sticks and hummus, maybe it's a Kit Kat. So you have that then to keep you going for the rest of the day, and have 2 to 3 servings of dairy and up to 2 servings of fat. So we're going to move on to what those servings kind of look like for us. So we have this portion size handy hints. This is part of the British Heart Foundation's work. So if you do find this tool really useful, I would recommend popping onto their website. They have lots of different ways in terms of measuring out portion sizes. That's really visual and doesn't mean that we're getting out the scales to necessarily weigh out our cereal. They can be really quick and useful tools to use just to visually check if it's roughly the right amount we should be having. So if you have your hand, your carbohydrates would be the large part of your palm, and actually if you put your hand in a fist, that is probably roughly about the size of a jacket potato that you should be having. So that kind of maybe puts into perspective how much carbohydrates we should be having. The smaller part of our palm would be meats and beans, so that's more like your red meat, so maybe like a small burger would be about that size. Your fish and chicken, because it's a lot leaner, is about the full width of your hand. And if you think about the depth, it'd be about a deck of cards. So that's the portion for chicken and fish. So already you're probably thinking, you know, when I'm putting stuff on my plate, that looks very different to what this is telling you, and it can be very easy to over portion and put too much on our plate at meal times, particularly. If you had fruit, that's kind of roughly the same size as your meat and beans, and what I like to think is if I had a cupped hand, how many strawberries could I fit in there? How many blueberries could I fit in there without them starting to roll away? And that's probably roughly a portion. Similarly with vegetables, if I did 2 cupped hands, how much could I fit in there? And that's roughly a portion as well. I think most people are always quite shocked about this. Butter is your fingertip. So if you are having a lot of toast and things that you're putting butter on sandwiches, it is only a small amount. So you can easily have a lot of that in a day without realising. And cheese, which is definitely my guilty pleasure, is 2 fingers worth. So if you are having, you know, cheese and crackers, or even if you're cutting it up before you're going to grate it for some pasta, it is about 2 fingers worth, and that is hard cheese. So already you can start putting a very visual image into what our plate should be looking like. And a great tip I was actually told was that before I plate up a meal, if I put my vegetables on first, the next kind of follows suit. Usually I think a lot of people can always put on what they enjoy most, and for me that would be carbohydrates. So I'd quite happily put on all my chips or all my potatoes, all my rice first, because I know that's what I love, and then I squeeze on the rest. If we start with that vegetables, we know we're definitely getting half a plate full, and then you can put on the other 2 portions, and you know it's probably going to be more balanced as well. So that's a really handy way to look at our portion sizes. And like I said, if it is something that you feel is visual and works well for you, I would recommend going on that British Heart Foundation website and looking at some of the other tips and hints that they have. So we know about all our healthy eating messages, and then there's reading food labels, which some people will love to do and some people won't be interested in as much, but it's definitely a really useful tool to be able to do. Often I like to think of it as a completely different language. It can be very confusing, and there's some great tips and hints out there. There's a wonderful app, the Change for Life app, which you can scan barcodes and it'll tell you in really simple terms like how much sugar are in things, and sometimes I'll give you alternate options as well. But just to quickly talk about it, we obviously have our traffic light symbols, which we recognise really well, and like I said, it's really visual and you can know straight away what's good. If it's got lots of greens, we can eat it often, oranges some of the times, and reds as little as often, a lot less often, should I say. Obviously companies don't love you to be able to read their food labels very easily, otherwise you wouldn't pick their food as often if you probably knew that it was unhealthy for you. So you do find now that a lot of places stop putting the colours on and it may be translucent. It is, we have some handy cards actually that we could always send out that just translates this into this, so you can make it really easy to read, and make sure that you're having the best option possible. Always worth remembering that often they do it per 100 grams, so something that may seem quite healthy or moderately healthy, 100 grams for 1 biscuit, you may get half a packing and think, oh actually that wasn't the most healthy option that I could have had. We also have our nutritional information above, so legally they have to put this on here. None of this has to be on any packaging, so it's worth getting used to maybe reading some of this and having a look, and it should always be the highest amount, and then going down. Similarly, if you're reading the ingredients on the packet, they'll always start with the ingredients with what's most in that product. So if you are eating, you know, chocolate chip cookies and honey comes up or sugar comes up, at one of the first ones, you know it's very high in that product, and then they'll reduce it down as to how much is in the cookie. So it's always worth it getting to know food labels. I'd say if you don't read them often, what I'd advise is, you know, if you do have a guilty pleasure, just finding out what's in that product. So, you know, if you do love a custard cream, have a look at that packet. Is there a healthier alternative that you can swap that one thing for? And start off small, rather than going through your food cupboard that you've probably just put all that lovely food in there, and then you're thinking, oh, I can't eat half of this. Start off with just that one guilty pleasure and find a swap for it, and then look at other things you can swap it in time. Not everyone wants to look at food labels when they're shopping, and I appreciate that, but just start small. So as we said, low is the light and healthier choice. Medium is okay most of the time. Try green products where possible, and high is fine to have occasionally, but should be monitored and limited. So we know that healthy eating is a huge building block in terms of us feeling healthy and happy. Food plays such an important part with our life, you know, with how we sleep, with how we function at work, with, you know, everyone will know that when they're hungry, they might feel a bit more irritated. So it is really important to try and have a healthy diet. But it's not the only thing that keeps us healthy, and, you know, part of that is being physically active. So I'll only talk about this very briefly, but the recommended guideline is 150 minutes of moderate activity a week. So things like walking, swimming, cycling, things that aren't going to raise your heartbeat up much, but is keeping you active, or 75 minutes of vigorous, intense activity a week. So things that is going to make you breathless, and that's probably the difference. If it's making you breathless, it's definitely vigorous activity. If it's not, then you're probably in a more moderate activity, but you can mix and match between, and it's just about staying as active as possible throughout the week. They recommend 2 days of activity that builds strength, but that could be things like carrying your shopping bags from your car into the house. Things like that can be included in that physical activity. It's not about saying I have to go to the gym to do this, or I have to put on this video and do this session. It can be things that we do around the house, things like cleaning and carrying the hoover. They all add up to us being physically active. Minimize sitting down. It can often be hard at work, but, you know, do try and stand up and have a little walk around 5 minutes of every hour. And improving your balance. So things like dancing, Tai Chi and bowls all improves our balance. There are some great apps out there. So things like Couch to 5K, if you're interested in, you know, starting to run. It's wonderful weather now. That's a great option. Active 10 tracks and monitors walking activity. So really is a great way to start getting you walking again. It's all about getting 10 minutes of walking in a day, which is really lovely. And there's lots of other apps out there that can help us get out of hibernation and start getting active again. I'm not going to talk about this so much. There was a session later today that's going to talk about smoking more specifically, but obviously we know smoking contributes to our health as well, and there's lots of reasons why smoking can make us feel unwell. There's a fantastic app by the NHS that can help track our goals and our spending, and can help us make that quit attempt. So if you are a smoker or know someone who is or wants to know more about it, there will be a session later on today which talks about it in a little bit more detail. So there's lots of things that make up our healthy our healthy eating habits. And we've talked, very quickly about, healthy eating guidelines, nutrition, reading food labels, and that's really just the start. It is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more information out there, and if you do find it interesting, I will tell you a bit more about the services at the end, as they go into a lot more detail about these topics. But just to reflect on, it's all right knowing this information, but how do we put that into making positive change and making those behaviour change actions? So we know that making small changes can make big differences. It's not about making huge changes that impact our life. Just those small ones accumulate and can really make a huge difference and improve our life and our health journey. So I will send out this monitoring template to Hayley, but this is the behaviour change tree that we have. So this tree is a really great useful tool to help jot down your goal and how you're going to achieve it, and really puts those building blocks into place to help us achieve those goals in the best and most sustainable way. So I'm going to go through what that process would look like. So when we're making a goal, when we're really thinking about making small changes to our lifestyle, that could be about eating healthily, but it could be about, I know you've had other sessions this week about maybe physical activity and other elements of well-being, maybe it's sleep. But it's really key to understand the motivation of why we're wanting to do it and why we're wanting to achieve that goal. So it's really great to reflect before making that goal. Okay, what is my motivation? What is the reason why I'm doing this? And that's really going to start embedding those roots on you achieving those goals. So I know I won't be the only one here that has, flippantly said something like, I'm going to lose 4 stone by summer, and actually haven't been able to achieve that goal, and thought to myself, oh, but I've said it, like, why hasn't that happened? And often it's because I've not made a SMART goal. And that SMART goal needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be achievable, realistic and time-based. If I set myself a very unrealistic goal, I'm only demotivating myself when I don't reach that goal. So instead of saying I'm going to lose 4 stone by summer, yeah, it's time-based, but not really. Summer could be 2 weeks, in England it could be 6 months. When does summer start and when does it end? Is 4 stone really achievable? Not really. So instead, I could say something like, I'm going to lose 1 kilogram every week. I'm going to weigh myself weekly, and I'm going to do this by swapping my snacks for fruit and going for a walk on my lunch breaks. I've suddenly made that a far more achievable goal. It's very specific. I've set myself small goals within that, swapping my snacks and going for walks. It's realistic. There's a time frame. So, over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to check in weekly, and it's achievable. So already I've created a framework for me to be able to achieve this goal, and it helps support me, rather than just saying I'm going to do this and failing. I've put the steps in place to be able to hopefully achieve it. It's always worth considering our triggers and why they happen. So for instance, if I'm going for a walk and I keep passing the fish and chip shop and it smells nice, and then I get a fish and chips, that's going to impact my goal. So making sure that we understand our triggers, if I'm feeling unhappy, am I going to snack more, and am I not going to get those healthy snacks? So what situations might trigger us to eat more than we usually would? Think about those. Think about your behaviour, while you're doing it, and the consequence. If I do go on that walk, I'm doing really well, but then I have the fish and chips, I'm likely going to feel guilty and feel really frustrated with myself because I've been working really hard. I shouldn't have just gone that route, and I found myself having something that I know I didn't want to have. So we've got an example here. I had a bad day at work and thought that a big bar of chocolate on the sofa would cheer me up. Afterwards, I felt frustrated. And I think there's always worth mentioning that, you are allowed to, of course, have that chocolate bar and feel fine with it. But if you are feeling frustrated and you are feeling that these things are triggering you, then you need to put actions in place to try and reduce those triggers, and make those changes to then help support that goal that you've made. So like I said, possible triggers might be nice, walking past the fish and chip shop and it smelling nice, being hungry, seeing people that you know may influence you as well, being in a bad mood, being a sunny day. These things can all be triggers to us. So it might be possible behaviours from our triggers, could be, you know, having a really big meal, it could be, you know, feeling hungry and having something small, carrying on walking past that fish and chip shop. So that's, you know, a possible behaviour. And possible consequences maybe, you know, gaining weight if you are trying to lose it, enjoying your meal. You might feel absolutely fine about it and have a really positive experience. You might feel annoyed or feel like you've given in. So it's worth really thinking all about those triggers, those behaviours and those consequences and how they may affect you. So things that can help combat those triggers. So for instance, if you are wanting to eat healthily, but you keep finding that you go food shopping and you keep getting snacks, we've all done it. You know, don't go shopping hungry. You know, have something to eat beforehand, have a list and stick to that list. That way you have noticed your trigger, you've changed your behaviour, and the consequences that you're going to be getting the food you want and not spending food on snacks that you don't want. Where possible, ask for support. You know, talk to a partner, friends, family, and say, you know, this is the goal I'm wanting to achieve. If you see me doing this, you know, tell me not to. I'm really wanting to work hard on this. You know, can you come for a walk with me on my lunch breaks, you know, to a colleague maybe, and so that you've got that accountability and that motivation to continue, and you've got that support there from someone that you know and you trust. And then monitoring, it's always important to monitor. How do we know if we're achieving our goal or getting to the point we want to get to? So things like we've said, the Couch to 5K app, there's things like the Change for Life app here that monitors our food labels. You could create a food diary, you could, you know, have a step count watch. There's lots of ways to monitor your goal and how you do that. And then always the nicest one is rewarding ourselves. You know, we've done a good job, we've worked hard, there should be a reward, and we should be rewarding good behaviour. But what I would say with that is always try and avoid rewarding yourself with food. Food is there, you know, to be had and to be eaten and to be enjoyed. We can eat anything in moderation. So doing a really good week and then saying, oh, but I can have a bottle of wine. Well, you're more than welcome. You know, you're an adult, you can have a bottle of wine, that's your choice, but that shouldn't be a reward. What a reward should be is, you know, buy yourself a bunch of flowers, say I'm going to have an hour to myself and run a nice bath, take yourself to the cinema, really reward yourself with something that isn't food based, especially if you're trying to eat healthy, as it may feel frustrating if you haven't reached that goal and you feel like you can't have something and then you only want it more. Make sure you have everything in moderation and do reward yourself with things that are going to bring more joy into your life, such as you know, going out for a long walk with a friend, going to the cinemas, buying maybe your favourite album on iTunes so that you can listen to it in the car, those kind of things, you know, a new top or something like that. And then it's all about routines and habits and creating those. If you are struggling maybe to get to the supermarket to get all that food in that you want to get because you work long hours, creating that routine where you say, okay, I'm going to get up 15 minutes early and I'm going to, on my phone, do a click and collect order, and then after work I'm going to collect it, and then I'm going to have food in the house and I know I can prepare fresh meals. Making sure that you can change those routines. You know, I want to go for a walk, but I've got the kids, can I bring the kids with me, or can I get my partner to look after them while I take myself away for an hour and do some activity? And arranging those routines with people is really important for you to be able to continue working towards your goals. and a bit of extra help. You know, if you do find yourself needing extra help, there's definitely services and support out there, and like I said, different things that you could use, such as you know, there's the Easy Meal app that gives you lots of recipes, healthy recipes, and there's our services, which I'm going to talk about next. Walking groups, local walking groups, there's lots of places where you can find support and like-minded people that's obviously on the same journey as you. And it's all about positive triggers. I think we have to be kind to ourselves, and creating a healthy and positive mindset is always a lot more likely to help us achieve our goal than berating ourselves if we haven't. So make sure you keep a positive mindset and work towards it in a really healthy way. So this presentation is obviously really short. I don't expect that any of you feel maybe different in how you would control, how you feel in control of your food choices, but always nice to come back to this and reflect on maybe how we feel and where we'd put ourselves with knowing this new information, or how we hope to feel maybe at the end of the week if there are some goals we would like to put in place. So I'm going to talk to you briefly, hopefully, you know, in the next 5 minutes about the services we offer, and then I'll have time then to answer any questions if there are any. So 1 Year Leeds is a free healthy living service, and we're funded by Leeds City Council. So we're here really to support people to create those small changes that make big differences, and we have 5 services that really help people in that way to make those changes. So we have our Be Smoke Free service. So that's our 12-week course that helps people stop smoking with free nicotine replacement treatment and support with a coach one-to-one to help make those behaviour changes. We have our weight management service, which is mostly linked with this course. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about healthy eating. Our weight management service is a 12-week course, and you can do it as a group. You can do it one-to-one. We have clinics in Leeds, not as many as before COVID, but there are some available. But we also still run groups online, so via Teams, which is really useful if you've got a busy working day or you've got kids to collect from school. There's a lot of options and time options out there for you to be able to join these groups, and it makes it a little bit easier for you. So there's face-to-face clinics, remote clinics, online, or one-to-one sessions as well. And the 12-week course each week goes through a different topic. I've brushed on some already, but a different topic in depth, and at the end of it you'll create a small goal which you'll then hope to take on for the rest of the 12 weeks, and with that you'll see small changes which hopefully will make that big difference. It's a great sustainable way and is really just there to help create a lifelong change in eating healthy, rather than saying you can't have this. It's all about adopting those small changes. It's a wonderful peer support group as well, so you will find a lot of like-minded people in those groups, and everything is private and confidential, so all your weigh-ins are private with your coach, and is not something that's discussed in the group. We have our Eat Better course. It has been rebranded as Eat Better. I know it says Eat Well in there, and this is a great course for those people that don't need to or don't want to lose weight, and is all about healthy eating. So it's one-to-one with a coach, and during the sessions you can really talk about your own experience with food. You know, you may have a personal goal that might be to you're having lots of teas with sugar in and you really want to be reducing your sugar intake, and you can really talk with your coach one-to-one about that more specifically and understand her healthy eating guidance. We have our Move More service, so it's a perfect service for those people who want low impact exercise classes, so real beginner classes. We have 5 walking groups across Leeds. We have our exercise classes that take part on a private Facebook group. They're live sessions that are done with our coach, who is fantastic and uses everyday items, so you don't need to have equipment at home. You can just be, you know, picking up those tins of beans and those water bottles to help use that to help you with like strength exercises. Because they're online, you can do them in your own time at home, and you're not dictated to attending a class at a certain time, which is fantastic. And then finally, we have our Cookwell service. So that's funded by Jamie's Ministry of Food. The service is an 8-week course in Leeds Kirkgate Market, and each week you cook a different meal. It's £2 a session, and all the food's provided, so you go home with about a meal and a half's worth of food, and it's a lovely practical course that's really hands-on. And there are services really in a nutshell. You can sign up online, over the phone, or you can be formally referred by a GP or health professional, which can be done either on our website or through systems such as System 1. Perfect, thank you Hayley for popping that in the chat. So that's pretty much the session. It's a very quick session, sorry, I've crammed a lot in a small amount of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Feel free to pop them in the chat or just speak out.
What we'll do is we're still recording at the moment, so we'll just leave it open to the floor, just if anyone does have any kind of comments, any questions, like generic ones they want to ask, and then I'll stop the recording just in case anyone has anything, you know, a little bit more personal to ask that they don't want to put there. So yeah, I'll leave it. If you don't want to put your cameras on and do it on microphone, if you just want to pop something in the chat, I personally would just like to say, like, thank you so much for that. Like, food is my one. I absolutely love food, so it's always really interesting to kind of see how things progress and change with it. And I think like the hand portion bit, that's like a whole new way of doing things, and that's like a really easy way to kind of do it on a quick basis. So like I found that really helpful. And with that cooking course, I've literally just said to Serena, who I'm sharing an office with, like, right, I'm getting signed up to that. Yeah. That's me going to that one.
It's a really lovely course, and I think often we can feel very overwhelmed by, you know, oh, should we be weighing this and should we not be? It can feel a lot. So I feel like anything that makes it really quick and easy for us to make slightly healthier changes, like I said, it's all about moderation and making informed choices where we can. So I'm glad it's been useful.
I know it really has. I've just seen that James was typing, but I don't know if that was in error or not. So if no one's got any questions to ask on here, I'll just end the recording now. But I will leave it open to the floor for anyone who wants to kind of pop in with any comments or anything like that. But I will just stop the recording now.